Hi, friend.
Good morning.
So you have a poll that that was commissioned for this conference that came up with a lot of interesting results. But one of the most interesting ones was that we are actually, according to the data that you've compiled, worse off than we think we are. So when we look at this, it's like, so it's, okay, people, don't believe you're lying what?
I think the answer to that is don't believe you're lying nostalgia for Michigan.
Okay.
And, you know, we did a survey for the chamber back in February, and we asked Michigan voters to rank the state 1 to 50 on a number of key metrics. And one of the things we found was Michiganders ranked the state dead average on everything, right around that 25 to 27 mark.
Okay, and everything being education,
performance, per capita income, unemployment rate. They just said we're average, and they don't know better. And so we wanted to follow that up in this survey. We presented voters with 3 specific facts. The fact that we're 44th in 4th grade reading scores, 46th in unemployment rate, and the fact that we have dropped from 16th to 40th in per capita income over the last 25 years. Voters were not aware of any of those facts.
So, and I guess this gets back to sort of the original question, how can a state en masse believe that their lived experience is better than reality?
Because it's what they've always known. Michigan has always been above average. Michigan has always been a state of growth. Nobody's telling voters that it's not anymore. Nobody's telling voters there's a problem. So they're living on a nostalgia of what we are in Michigan or what we've always been. And I think it's important, not just for elected officials. In fact, I think they have a smaller role to play than the institutions of this state to tell the voters there are red flags here, there are problems. As Sandy Barua says, the house is on fire.
Well, so, I mean, for as long as you've been doing this and for as long as I've been doing this, which has been roughly the same amount of centuries, that we've had this issue where our culture is people can graduate from high school and go and get a good job,
right?
And that we have world-class universities here, and they also try to deliver that message. They're institutions saying that to thrive in this world, that you need some type of higher education. So, which institutions are failing, and how are they doing so?
Well, you are correct. We are a state that has always thought you'll always have a good middle-class job. And there is not a focus group I do with the voters of Michigan in which they don't tell me, we're a manufacturing state. We build things. Well, guess what? All the other states are blowing by us because we are sticking to this idea that that is what we should do. And it is a failure of, frankly, both political parties to tell voters, you don't need more education. It is a failure of any institution or any organization that is saying, you don't need more education than a high school diploma to succeed. You do. You will get blown by. As Michigan as a state,
as has happened,
Michigan as a state is getting blown by other states. No state over the last 25 years has fallen more in per capita income than Michigan. And that is because other states are not as nostalgically wedded to manufacturing jobs as Michigan.
So there's the cultural aspect of people not necessarily feeling like they have to go to a 2-year institution like a community college or a 4-year institution like a university or a 4-year college or university. What are I assume that affordability is part of that?
Yeah.
I mean, certainly there's simultaneously to what you're finding are also studies that say that, hey, if you go and get a 4-year degree, you don't necessarily make that back in terms of the jobs that you're getting. So what are the policy prescriptions, which I realize is not entirely your wheelhouse, to marry the reality of the affordability of higher education to what you need to get by?
You know, we've done a lot of work with the Chamber on this question, specifically to understand what is preventing people from going into a 2 or 4 year degree. And first of all, they're being told, students are being told by their adults, oh, you don't need to do this. But secondly is the affordability issue. It is the single biggest obstacle that we see. And one of the contributing obstacles is those students, those parents, don't know how to price the cost of a 4-year degree. It's all over the map. We did these focus groups. We had, there's always one nugget in a focus group that sticks with you. We had this young woman, high school student, the only one of the group who was adamant she had priced out college, knew exactly how much it would cost. So I'm like, great, have at it. Tell us, how much would it cost? She was going to go to a 4-year degree at Michigan State, $400,000. Wildly overpriced. And that is the challenge that both students and parents face out there. There's no clear pricing structure. Nobody buys the way that college is priced. And that's a huge structural problem here in this state.
So how do we fix it? Is there, I mean, do we need some sort of central planning location where people can go and figure that out? I mean, it's certainly, there's no shortage of resources being thrown at this issue. So why is it so hard to solve?
Well, first of all, Michigan is one of the few states that offers 2 years of free community college. That needs to be drilled into every single student and parent working their way through high school right now.
I'm one of the parents benefiting from that.
Yeah, I mean, it is a great opportunity for students. It helped, extreme help on the affordability issue, and yet a lot of parents don't even know about it. So I think all of our institutions, from the state to universities, community colleges, across the board, need to focus on making sure the students coming through the system understand 2 free years is there for you. All you have to do is go to your community college. It's the most fundamental thing we can do to start moving those students after high school into higher education.
I want to switch tracks here to just politics, which is, you know, last year everyone was excited about the candidacy of newly minted independent Mike Duggan as a candidate for governor. Just before this conference, that candidacy collapsed. So, I mean, what does that tell us about the hunger for a non-aligned, independent candidate for, well, anything?
Well, first of all, everybody likes the idea of voting for an independent. Everybody likes the idea of sticking it to the two parties and voting for someone that's independent, until there's a name behind that independent, and it becomes a different equation for them. But more importantly, here in Michigan, voters have no history, no experience of voting for independent candidates. And the infrastructure is prohibitive against an independent in Michigan. The rules are set by the two parties, and they're not giving up control to allow an independent into the party.
No, that's true. I mean, the infrastructure for watching and certifying elections is bipartisan.
Right.
You know, by design.
Right. Both parties want to retain control of the system. And for Mike Duggan, that became a huge obstacle going forward. But more than that, you look at, for example, the governor's race. You have the Republican and Democratic candidates. They're going to have huge amounts of money pouring in from Washington groups, from the Republican Governors Association, Democrat Governors Association. There is no equal group for an
independent Governors Association.
So the obstacles, the barriers are immense to any independent running in this state.
So as someone who's worked in politics for decades and decades, when you look at that and you see the obstacles, do you see a path through that forest?
I think it's a very difficult path. I think it requires someone that is wealthy, to be blunt, or somebody that brings great wealth to the table. So that they can overcome those obstacles. I mean, it isn't just you have to have the money to go up on the air and compete with each side. You have to create your own infrastructure. Well, you know, parties help turn out votes. They have people in every county. That doesn't exist for an independent. You have to create that from scratch. If there is going to be an independent movement in this country of any sort, it's going to have to come with some infrastructure to help those candidates.
I mean, one of the things that's also interesting, we've seen this in polling, probably yours too, is that even people who self-identify as independents or non-aligned still typically identify as conservative or liberal, progressive, is that they do fall roughly into a column.
I mean, we all have histories. All of our lives, most people have tended to lean one way or the other. What an independent candidacy, the biggest obstacle they face is getting voters not to do what they've done all their lives, which is to plunk an R or a D lever. And that to me is the obstacle that any independent, that is the most challenging obstacle they face, bar none, is getting people to just change their lifetime behaviors and take a risk on you. I mean, that's what an independent is asking.
Yeah, I mean, that's no small thing. So if you were looking to create a system that's more open to someone outside the two parties, what would you like? What would be the top one or two things that you would go for?
Well, one, and I think this applies to most every state, is the laws are just biased to the parties.
Sure.
I mean, perfect example here in Michigan. Most people didn't know this in the governor's race. The candidate listed at the top of the ballot by law represents whatever party currently holds that Secretary of State's office. And then the next party falls, and then it would be the Libertarian Party or the Green Party or the Constitution Party. Mike Duggan would have come in last on that ballot. Why aren't we rotating those names? It's something, it's institutional barriers, it's simple as that.
In some years you would see the Libertarian at the top of the ballot.
Right, sometimes the Green Party candidates, sometimes the Republicans, sometimes the Democrat. And it would rotate also by precinct. Most states rotate these names around. I don't see why we can't do that here in Michigan.
So you mean what you see in one precinct in one county would be a different lineup than what you...
Rotate the candidates so that nobody gets that structural advantage. And that's just one small example.
Madness.
Right. It's one small example of the bias that goes into these rules and these laws right now. So I would say help remove some of that bias. I don't think either party is going to be willing to do that, to be blunt. And then help create a structural financial system that helps independents have the financing to compete with national outside groups.
Those are some fascinating insights, some fascinating ideas that fortunately you and I will get to talk about in the future, and hopefully maybe it'll give the people here something to talk about on the car ride home.